Hello, my name is April and I am the former GRA for the Osprey project. This is my informal fish cutting and gutting video. I do admit that prior to this project I have never cut up fish before and that I actually have a weird fear of fish. So all of the techniques that you will see in this video, I actually made them up over time. Thus, by no means do you have to mimic what I have done. This was simply the easiest way I could think of in how to do fish prep. I encourage you to use whatever method works for you, especially if you regularly prepare fish. For this project, we do fish prep every other day. Here is just an overview of all of the gear you will need for fish prep. You will also need 1 or 2 18-gallon buckets to defrost fish, but they're not pictured here. Firstly, you will need some sort of receptacle if you are unable to dump your fish discreetly in a lake or if you are not at a fish cleaning station. You will need a cutting board. You will also need a knife sharpener, a paring knife, a fillet knife, and most importantly, a hatchet. You will also have the option of using a scale to weigh the food. One item that you'll absolutely need is gloves, and I actually prefer using disposable ones rather than ones pictured here, but it's really up to you. You're also going to need a container to put your prepped fish in, a towel to dry the gear, and finally your cleaning gear. We actually use this bleach and then we dilute it with water and then we put it in the spray bottle there. The first step in fish prep is defrosting fish. We defrost about 4 to 7 fish depending on the number of birds and the size of fish. So fill up 1 or 2 18-gallon buckets with water and put the frozen fish in. Wait about 3 to 6 hours and then do a test to see if the fish are completely defrosted. Bite-sized pieces are for when the birds are really young. The first step is to descale the fish using the hatchet. You can also do this with a spoon or a fillet knife. I just find it faster using a hatchet. Do the same thing on the other side. The next step is to remove the guts and the swim bladder. So take the fillet knife and cut down the belly of the fish. Now I'm just mimicking this cut because the river station has already cut the fish. But I do want to make one note. To remove the innards, I just find it easier to use the knife to separate them first. And then I'll go in with my hand and actually remove them. Then we need to remove the head. I usually start cutting the head off behind the fins. I then use the hatchet to actually remove the head. Now, the next step is to cut a fillet, and it is very important to remember to sharpen all of your knives before fish prep. Otherwise, you will have a very dull knife like I do, and that is very unsafe. I actually forgot to sharpen the knives before making this video, unfortunately. Next, we will use the hatchet and remove the back meat from the fish. Now you can actually do this and just slide the hatchet down the fish and scrape as you go. That's usually faster, but it's been a little less than a year since I did this, so I'm a bit rusty. Do the same with the lower tail part of the fish. The next step is to remove the meat from the ribs. So I slice each rib separately first. I then cut in between each rib. Then I pull off the meat by hand. Alright, on the other side, same deal. Step 1, cut a fillet. Step 2, backbone meat. Step 3, once you're done with the backbone meat there, tail meat. Step 4 is rib bone meat. And then you are done with one fish. The next step is to take all of your fish and chop them into bite-sized pieces using the paring knife. For a younger bird, about 4.5 weeks old, I would chop them into this size. For an older bird, about 5 to 5.5 weeks old, chop them into thumb-sized pieces. Finally, take all of your fish and put them in a container and store them, or I like to actually weigh the meal's amount on the scale and tare for the weight of the container. Do not feed fish that has been in the fridge older than 2 days. This is why we do fish prep every other day. Fish prep for older birds and fledged birds is different. In this case, we usually just score the fish and make it easy for tearing. If the fish looks small enough for an osprey to fly off with it, we leave it whole. Depending on the amount of flies and maggots you have during your field season, I would actually still recommend removing the guts. So this is what scoring is. For bigger fish, I would actually recommend that you cut them into pieces, as many as 3 to 5 pieces. We call these fish steaks because they are steak size. Now this size fish is actually manageable for an osprey, but I'm cutting it in 2 pieces anyway. You can use the hatchet to do that, but this fish is small enough for a fillet knife. And then finally, remove some of the scales at the end as well. Once done with fish cutting and gutting, wash off your knives, your cutting boards, your hatchet, etc. You'll also want to wash the 18-gallon buckets, but you don't have to sanitize the buckets. However, you do have to sanitize the rest of the gear. And this is a spray bottle pump as well. Wait about 5 minutes for the sanitizer to sink in. And then take your tools and rinse them off again with water. Towel dry them to prevent rusting. And that's the end.